I want to talk to you about Amy Coney Barrett and the Supreme Court and all this. But before we get to that, I really want to talk to you about this social media censorship, which I just feel is election interference and interference with our First Amendment rights. I've been railing against this, and people keep saying to me, I was on All Access last night, and people keep saying to me, no, these are private companies. They have a right to do anything they want. I feel that the building should be burned to the ground, and the ground should be salted after we tar and feather the heads of the companies. Is there anything we can do legally to stop this?
Well, I think that, going all Nebuchadnezzar and, razing them to the ground and salting the earth so that nothing can be built is probably a great legal way to go. But I agree with you that, that Americans are just really tired of all of this censorship because they're trying to have their cake and eat it too with this whole Section 230 thing. And if you've been hearing any of this in the media, all that Section 230 is gives big tech immunity when they say that they're not a publisher and they don't want to be responsible for third-party content. So for all of the tweets and all of these, Instagram posts that I'm going to be looking at, they don't want anything to do with the hashtag blessed of Jenna, right? So they're going to say, we're not responsible. We don't want any of this as a publisher. But at the same time, we're seeing in just days before the election how much they're flagging different posts, they're censoring things. I mean, the New York Post, as a publisher in their own right, this has now been a full week that they have been locked out of their account simply for reporting on a story that if Joe Biden and his campaign really think is that egregious, they can sue the New York Post for defamation. The Trump campaign, we have 3 lawsuits going on: CNN, New York Times, and CNN. And the New York Times and the what's the other one? The Washington Post. So we have those 3 going on, and we're not stepping in and saying anything to Twitter because they're the ones that actually published the stories. And so here, Jack Dorsey and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, all of these platforms are trying purposefully to create the narrative to get you to discount certain stories that are not favorable to their preferred candidate, Joe Biden. This is shocking, Drew. And in America, when we value free speech, free discourse, we should not have these platforms that say, hey, I don't want any liability of being a publisher, yet I want to censor the speech that I don't prefer. And we do want to be the arbiters of truth. We want to be the arbiters of content. We want to be the arbiters of your speech. So really, the solution here has to be Congress. They need to get off their butts and actually do something together. But you know that the left won't, because they're perfectly fine with this because it helps them.
Sure,
That's how activists feel.
And it's not like this just grew up out of the ground. The government gave them these rights. The government created the monster. The government has to kill the monster. The government has to bring the monster down. It is ridiculous. The New York Post story is so much better sourced, so much more transparent, and now being confirmed as opposed to the Russian collusion story, which they pumped for 3 years and nobody ever said a thing about it. It's just insane. And if there's no legal remedy, really, I'm looking to the end of the Frankenstein movie with the peasants with torches coming out and just saying, give us the monster, because it really has to be stopped. All right. So let's talk about Amy Coney Barrett. The left just didn't show up for the Senate committee hearing. I guess are they going to show up for the vote, do you think? I mean, what is this the strategy now?
Well, it's completely ridiculous that they're not even willing to participate in the process. And all they did today was give Republicans the full mic. And so all that the Republicans did were able to talk about how ridiculous the Democrats are for putting these pictures of people in their chairs. I mean, one of the senators was right. It looked like, a sporting event where we're just putting all of these people in the midst of COVID. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. It's childish of them. And they are trying to perpetuate this false narrative that somehow this is unconstitutional. That's not correct. They are just sore losers. At the end of the day, the American people elected President Trump. They elected a Republican Senate majority, and we can do this, and we should do this. And this is returning the judicial branch to its rightful role in the constitutional separation of powers, to say that Amy Coney Barrett actually wants to be a judge. Imagine that. She doesn't want to be a lawmaker. She doesn't want to be a partisan policy activist. And what the Democrats are showing is they don't want to be held accountable to the Constitution, to the judicial branch, or even to we the people when they're looking forward to all of this manipulation of ballots, ballot harvesting, extended deadlines, all of that. They will manipulate the rules any way they can to not be held accountable.
You know, it is funny now that you mention it, that the crisis that they see is a judge who wants to follow the Constitution. That's the crisis that they see. There's more and more talk about this on the left, about the Constitution being a bug, not a feature, basically. And they really are, it's starting to come out. They're starting to say the quiet part out loud. Do you think they're going to pack the court if they win?
If they get in to the White House and to the Senate and they control the House, absolutely. There is nothing that they won't do for their own power. And they're going to pack the court because they don't want the judicial branch to hold them accountable. So they want to have the 50 and 60 years that they've already had. They want to extend that. And they want to have the rubber stamp leftist activists on the bench to just look the other way and say, we're not going to hold your policy to the constitutional standard. We're just going to push it through. And that is what they don't want. They don't want the Constitution to stop them. They don't want anyone to stop them from their insane power grab. So, of course, they're going to pack the court.
Let's say they don't pack the court. Let's say there's a 6-3 majority or whatever it turns out to be. I mean, I sometimes wonder if packing the court is just a way of threatening John Roberts into submission. But let's say they don't, and let's say Trump wins and Amy Coney Barrett becomes the justice. What realistically do you see happening going forward? I mean, they always kind of try to scare women with they're going to lose Roe v. Wade, they're going to lose abortion rights. They try to scare gays with they're going to lose Obergefell. Do you think any of those things are realistic possibilities?
Well, Amy Barrett answered these questions really well when she said that judges can't just select what they want to opine on. They're not legal pundits, right? So you have to have cases that actually challenge these rules substantively to then go up and then actually have the Supreme Court hear it and have the opportunity to say this particular set of facts shows us why we have to hold a certain way according to the Constitution, not just according to our partisan opinions and policy interests. And then because they rule a certain way, that then affects a prior precedent that is struck down for being unconstitutional. So, of course, that's possible. And of course, Justice Thomas, Justice Alito wrote a great dissent just a couple of weeks ago talking about how the constitutional process is what matters. We can all have these policy debates, and we should have them in our state legislatures and in Congress. But when you have a partisan activist court that since 1965 has basically looked the other way and they have drawn up this doctrine to pretend that our rights come from the Constitution, not from God, our creator, and the Constitution is there just to protect and preserve those, then you get a manipulated, wrong line of precedent that we should overturn. We should roll back and say, let's rule according to the Constitution and work out the policy according to that standard.
Yeah, I mean, people can always vote for other, it's not like the legislature legislates anymore, but if people actually would like some legislation, they could vote people in who would legislate the things that they want. It would be kind of like having, I don't know, a constitutional government. So
Shocker,
what is your
right?
take? Yeah, what is your take on John Roberts? I mean, I can't feel that thing he sided with the left on the Pennsylvania votes, saying that they could count votes for 3 days afterwards, no matter when they were postmarked. It just seemed like Looney Tunes to me. What is your take on this guy, just personally?
Yeah, he is kind of an enigma wrapped in a myth, wrapped in a what are you doing? Because he is not predictable. And that's the problem with John Roberts, is that at least when you had someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for example, of course, I completely disagreed with the majority of her opinions, all of them on the social issues, but she at least had a compelling and consistent judicial philosophy in terms of how she understood the Constitution. So she was predictable in that way. And that's what litigants want. We want to be able to go in front of the court and be able to say, based on the law, we understand that there's predictability here. John Roberts, that's the worst thing going for him, is that he's so unpredictable that it doesn't give any of the litigants an understanding of where he's going to hold and for what reason. And that was the problem as well with Anthony Kennedy. And so I think that John Roberts, he's definitely Bush's worst legacy. And he is going to be now relegated to the minority, which is a very good thing for litigants now that there will be a 5-4 or 6-3 majority, at least on the social issues. Because, and this is just astounding to me, because Roberts has written some really, really good opinions, like his dissent in Obergefell, when he said, hey, if you are supportive of same-sex marriage, that's fine, but this is not the constitutionally appropriate manner of going about this. He was absolutely correct. So my personal thought is, he clearly hates President Trump, and he clearly has some other contemplations that I'm not really sure how he can get from A to Z, where he is just trying to get his opinion in and then work his judicial philosophy around it. That doesn't work when you're on the judicial branch. He needs to either get a judicial philosophy that's appropriate to the constitutional interpretation, or he needs to step off and, go join Nancy Pelosi's house and try to be a legislator.
Jenna Ellis, it's always great to see you. We can now find you on Instagram making fish faces and doing whatever people do on Instagram.
Aren't you so excited? We'll see how this experiment goes.
We actually appreciate your great legal mind, and it's always great talking to you. Thanks a lot, Jenna.
Great to see you, Drew.
Before you go, one last thing. Hit the subscribe button so that you stay up to date on all our content.